Powered by Red Media in partnership with TSN, it is episode 18 of season 5 of the Rain Dregs Hockey Podcast, and it is presented by our title sponsor, Canadian Club Whiskey, who have introduced the first release of the Canadian Club Invitation Series, CC 15-year-old Sherry Cask. All the hallmarks of classic Canadian Club with the added richness and sweetness of sherry. There we see you, Ray Ferraro. You're in a hotel room in Seattle, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So I'm thinking as I'm, getting set this morning, and Ray and Cammie have, I'm going to call it the good fortune, being able and wanting to celebrate the double Thanksgiving, right?
Yes.
I mean, Cammie's American. Of course, you're going to celebrate U.S. Thanksgiving yesterday over the course of the week. You, as a proud Canadian, you celebrate the Canadian Thanksgiving earlier, but when you're traveling, you get none of that. So when you get back to Vancouver, do you just pick up and have a nice U.S. Thanksgiving meal and celebration? What happens?
No, every once in a while, you're in conversation and I'm telling Cammie about what I'm doing. And then I realize this is probably not part of the story she wants to hear. So she's at a soccer tournament in San Diego.
Okay.
She flew down yesterday. Reese is actually playing right as we tape now. Our 13-year-old actually just scored, which is super cool.
Very good.
We're I can hardly wait to see it. But she's in a minor soccer tournament hotel, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So
yeah.
I'm staying where the NHL teams stay in Seattle. It's a little bit different. I had a turkey dinner last night, Dregs, that was amazing at the hotel.
I thought you were going to say it was like Swanson, like a hungry man or something.
Dregs, it was amazing. So I'm telling Cammie about it. She's like, yeah, I had a protein bar and a salad.
Turkey-flavored protein bar
and
salad.
She was scrounging around for something to eat. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I had a great workout and a great turkey dinner. And so it is pretty cool, though. Like, the Seahawks played last night.
Mm-hmm.
And like all the 49ers and Seahawks fans walking around in their jerseys. And it's 60,000 people. Now, I saw more of them, Dregs, than I would have originally. Because I got in an Uber at the airport. I got to the hotel. I walk in and I'm like, I don't think the team's staying here. I think I'm in the wrong hotel. So I go to check in. They're like, no, we don't have anybody here. So I call Dan Murphy. And I go, hey, Murph, what hotel are we in? He tells me, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm about 4 miles from there. I was in the wrong hotel. I had to get another Uber.
That is such a Ray Ferraro travels. Now, why did you think that you were in the hotel that you went to? Like, what led you to believe that? Did you?
I had in my head, I think, oh, yeah, this is the one. But I never checked. Like, all I had to do was open the itinerary. And so I got in the car, and as I'm pulling my bag up, I'm like, yeah, I don't see any players or signs of players around here. Yeah. And when I walked up, the guy's like, no, let me check. Let me look at your confirmation number. And the confirmation code, he's like, yeah, ours are not that many digits. And they have letters. I'm like, oh, I'm in the wrong place, man.
Gord Miller's gonna love this story.
It never ends. I just can't get it right.
Well, speaking of stories, we've got a lot to deal with in Tim Hortons headlines. Tim Hortons has some tasty beverages and baked goods on their menu for the holidays, Ray. Try their new non-alcoholic Bailey's flavored Tim Hortons classics like Bailey's Cream Coffee. It's the classic taste of Timmy's original blend coffee infused with the flavor, of course, of Bailey's and cream. There's a wide variety of holiday drinks and baked goods, which I know you're a big fan of, Ray.
Oh, yeah.
Only available at Tim's. All right. So we've got Josh Morrissey of the Winnipeg Jets joining us here in episode 18, and we recorded the interview with Josh on Thursday, so we'll get to him momentarily, but the Jets making news. In the interview, Josh talks about how excited he is to have a quick meeting with Rick Bowness, who's in Florida, and the players didn't know. Morrissey, at the time of the recording, Ray, didn't know what was about to happen. So Rick Bowness joins the team this morning. They're getting set to take on the Florida Panthers. on the ice and announces that he is back. He'll be on the bench for the Winnipeg Jets, back full-time as head coach. And as anyone who's listening or watching on our YouTube channel, you're going to hear and see from Josh Morrissey how important Rick Bowness and the coaching staff of the Winnipeg Jets is to the players. So what a great story in Winnipeg and a great story for the Bowness family.
Well, the first thing you think of is, well, that must mean great news for his wife, Judy.
Yeah.
Which is the best thing. There's a part of the interview where Josh talks about if you're in a conversation with Rick, he doesn't go 5 minutes without mentioning Judy. So happy for the Bowness family. Good for Rick to be able to get back on the ice and back what he wants to do. And wish them all the best.
Here's real quick, and we'll move on to the Boston Bruins and another coaching angle. News normally gets out. And I tweeted something on Thursday, basically off the conversation we had with Josh, where he acknowledged that, the players expected to meet with Bowness. Mm-hmm. So I thought, well, that's kind of a neat tweet. I'll just put it out there. Obviously had no idea that he was coming back full time and didn't bother to poke that hard or dig that hard. But I did send a text to one of the people that I, know very well in Winnipeg with the organization. Didn't get a response back. And I'm like, that's interesting. And so the reason was, of course, they wanted to protect the information so that their social media people, their content people, could deliver the message the way they did. I mean, the team released a great video of Bowness going around the room, shaking hands, hugging the players and whatnot. So one of the few times where I don't mind not having the full story, because I think it was a cool way that the Jets
sometimes from the Jets, sometimes it's what you don't say that is most important.
In this case, that's 100% accurate. Again, speaking of the dressing room, I think many of us saw the clip and the soundbite from Jim Montgomery, the head coach of the Boston Bruins, but you wanted to talk about it and acknowledge it. So let's have a listen and have a look at that soundbite first. Now, this was from a few days ago with the Bruins on their father trip, right? The dads were with the Boston Bruins as they went through Florida. They're back in Boston now, but here was the message delivered by Montgomery to the players in the room.
All right, boys. I've been watching you guys hang out with your dads, and I got to be honest, I'm a little bit jealous. My dad passed away 9 years ago, and what an opportunity for you guys, And whether your dad's in heaven, right, Linus, or whether he's here with us, or Louts, whether he's watching at home on your sofa, they gave us the names we wear on the back, and they're proud of you guys, as they should be, right? Now, we're all proud to wear that B in front of us. What my dad expected was second and third effort every fucking night. Let's have second and third effort tonight, see where we are at the end of the season. All right? Starters, Forby, you and Chatty. We got Zach as line. Linus, you're in net.
How good is that? My buddy Phil Potter was on that trip, right? His son Matt plays for the Boston Bruins and said from Louis DeBrusque all the way through, it was just a tremendous experience for both the dads, the first-timers like Phil, but also for the players. And you can appreciate from Monty, Ray, just how important this experience is for everybody.
It's just having a read of the spot, of the moment, right? And I've never really thought of it that way, but what an amazing way to impact the players, to remind them why you have the name you have, and with your fathers on the trip. And, some teams, most teams now do mom's trips too, which I guess are just unbelievable. They just, the players, they laugh, the teams laugh at how different and how caring the guys are around their moms, as opposed to when the dads are out and they got to shepherd these guys around and make sure they get to the bus on time. But I loved the speech. I love you can't see, of course, but he goes, there's two players whose fathers are no longer with them. And he goes and he gives them each a little fist tap in the middle of the speech. I just thought it was amazing. I wish I could have brought my dad on on a father's trip. Like nobody did it back then. It would have been amazing.
I wonder where that originates, and it wouldn't be hard to find out. We'll have to find out, and then, but somebody had to have done it first. And then everybody went, geez, what a good idea that is. Right. Expensive, but a good idea. I mean, these guys are treated first class. Mums, dads, anyone, the mentors, anyone who's invited on that charter is having a good time.
Well, what about, so they room with their dad, like or their mom, and they get to sit in the meetings. They get to see what the day is like. And it's a really, really awesome thing that is now a mainstay for teams.
It is. Yeah, it's great stuff. Last week on the podcast, we talked about how we weren't going to continue to chew on the Edmonton Oilers because it felt like after the coaching change, okay, you got the bump, they're going to turn a corner here. Let's watch them run now, and maybe we'll have something positive to say. And we did for one episode, I think. And now all of a sudden, here we are talking about how Kenny Holland is going to drag this team out of the mud. And so my sense from talking to some people around the organization is that at least the general manager, I can't speak for senior management or ownership. They may have a different view on this entirely, is why not wait? Make the players earn that big trade. If you're going to throw futures into an equation, into a transaction, and you're not convinced that goalie, that defenseman coming back is going to actually turn things around and make it better, or even worse, you're concerned that there's something else that is missing. Maybe it's not a player. Maybe it's just the group. You can't fix it with one trade. Do you sell off those future assets at this point, Ray? Or, if you're Kenny, if you're not pressured into making a trade, do you just sit tight and make these players earn it a little bit more?
Well, I do think sometimes there is value in shuffling deck chairs around. And what I mean by that is that you're not necessarily making a trade of huge impact of player. Yet sometimes it's a jolt or somebody catches fire that comes over in a trade. Now, just before I got to the New York Islanders, the Islanders made a trade in like November of the year before, and they got Mark Fitzpatrick and Hubie McDonough from the LA Kings. And it wasn't earth-shattering trade by any means.
No.
They went something like 22-5 after the trade. Like it shouldn't have impacted, is my point, the way it did. Except it did. And so maybe that's the type of deal that you look at first. Hell, it's no secret they could use another goalie. But everybody else knows it too. Like, do you think they're getting a bargain? I will say this, and I know Ken quite well, is that I know he takes a lot of heat in Edmonton right now. But one thing he won't do is even if this is his last year, and I have no idea, but it's the last year on his contract, he's not going to blow out a bunch of future assets just to save himself. If it's not the right move for the team and the organization, he's not going to make it. And I think that must be hard to do, because it would be easy to blow out a bunch of future first rounders and such. But man, they're in just an unbelievable predicament. I just keep going back to 2 months ago when most of us had them in the Western Conference Final at least.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's the same team, except clearly it's not the same team.
Yeah. Do they miss the playoffs? I mean, not to radio you here, because we all think back to the St. Louis Blues having a terrible first half, a magnificent second half, en route to winning a Stanley Cup. It doesn't feel the same. I mean, we can't know for sure, but to bounce over the teams that the Oilers have to bounce over to get into that wild card spot is a pretty tall mountain.
Well, I saw something to get to 95 points in the pace percentage they have to play at, it seems like it can't happen, except it happened a year ago. Like, could it happen? I don't know. Can Skinner catch fire again? And hell, the other night in Carolina, when he fell in warm-up and went sliding through the Carolina team to the other blue line, and then
you love that, don't you?
Oh, I do, because it's just so like it's something he does every game. But the way things are going, he falls, slides to the Carolina blue line, gives up 4 goals in 13 minutes. Like, what the hell else is going on? You know, like right? Like sometimes the snowball does get bigger. Yeah. And that's what it feels like right now in Edmonton. Hell, they're not going to win any games giving up 5 and 6 goals, and it happens way too much.
Yeah. Speaking of goaltending and that Carolina game, by the way, Antti Ranta is now hurt for the Carolina Hurricanes, and you throw Freddie Anderson, who's out long term, and all of a sudden you go from a collection of riches in Carolina to going, but now we have a goaltending deficiency here in a big way.
Well, and certainly Anderson's, he's not coming back anytime soon with blood clotting. That's something, of course, they're going to be super careful with, and it takes time. Ranta's had a history of injury. This is why they had Jaro Halak in on a PTO just 2 weeks ago, and they released him from it. But you wonder if they have to revisit something in that position. Also, I just came across, so New Jersey's, they're a legit good team. Their 2 goaltenders are in the bottom 15 in save percentage and goals against average. So now does Tom Fitzgerald just sit and wait and hang around and see if his goalies can dig it out again, dig themselves out of the hole or not? I mean, so when you think of your favorite team needing a goalie, A, everybody else knows it too. B, there's some other complications to trying to find one. And so there's 3 teams we just came up with that could easily be kicking tires on the same goalies.
Yeah, and I keep looking at Mackenzie Blackwood in San Jose, and it's pretty obvious because we know where the San Jose Sharks are headed and what their direction is here. Maybe Mike Greer just thinks that, look, we also have to keep it somewhat competitive. And I'm not going to trade Mackenzie Blackwood at this point unless somebody's just ridiculously going to overpay.
Well, I did the game Monday in Vancouver, and Blackwood played. He was terrific. He was really good. I did notice he still had his, I was standing between the benches. He'd come over for a drink of water. He's still wearing his New Jersey undergear because it's all red. And I was like, it's kind of weird. It's just, it looked like
creature of habit. Feels good.
And it's kind of tattered, it didn't look like it was really great stuff, but he would be a name to think of for sure.
Yeah.
And you got to think, just because, Dregs, last thing, just because a team has 3 goalies, they don't want to trade one either because they're an injury away from, if you trade one, somebody gets injured, now you got nobody.
Yeah. By the way, Ryan Rishaug just, look at this guy is all over it, right? I mean, he's not just a pretty face on TSN and a host of multiple podcasts and, essentially the owner of the Ray and Dregs podcast in some way, small way. He also does a lot of our research, and he says the Washington Post has an article from 8 years ago, Ray, that says Barry Trotz started the father trips with the Nashville Predators. So I guess that would make sense.
It's awesome. Good.
There you go. I'm surprised he was paying attention.
Well, there's that too.
Ryan, not Barry. He's a sharp dude.
Yeah.
You want to talk about the Central Division or the Metro? Pick your poison. Just for differing
Central.
reasons.
Central, I think.
Okay.
Central.
So you've been a big fan of Dallas and Colorado, and we've got Josh Morrissey on the podcast. We know what Winnipeg is doing, and you've got St. Louis that's kind of hanging in there. And not to pound on the negative here, but how surprised are you at what the Minnesota Wild aren't doing, which is winning and not scoring, like Kaprizov and Boldy and Foligno? Like, go down the list. Billy Guerin, he's not losing his hair, but it's thinning over time. He's like the rest of us. He's getting older. He's pulling it out now. You know how sour Billy G must be because you really, what's different about the Minnesota Wild other than Matt Dumba isn't there? They're really, essentially, they're the same team.
Well, there's two things, really, when I look at them. One, this is the year they get kicked in the teeth with the Suter Parise buyouts. So they're $14 million under the cap that they've got to try and navigate. So that's, I mean, they knew it was coming, and you do the best you can with it, but that's a significant factor. It's one of those things. It's not an excuse. It's just the fact. Secondly, if anybody had thought that Minnesota was going to be a decent team this year, they would have thought that Kaprizov and Boldy, the two that you mentioned, would be would be significant contributors. So Kaprizov's got 1 goal, 5-on-5 this year.
Boosh.
1. Boldy hasn't scored in 8 games since he's been back from injury. They don't. You combine those two things, the $14 million under the cap, your two most creative offensive players have no goals. It doesn't really matter. You can try and win 2-1 all the time, but sometimes you got to win 4-3, and they can't do either right now.
Yeah. And look, I understand it. This is what I do for a living. You have to ask the hard questions. So I understand the speculation. Well, maybe they need a coaching change. Maybe they need this. Maybe they need that trade. But I think that you've explained it perfectly. So if you're the general manager, and it's kind of similar to what's going on in Edmonton, but if you're Billy Guerin, you're not firing Dean Evison when your offensive pieces, the guys that you need to drag you into the fight, aren't doing that, right? I mean, who knows? You get a little bit further down the path, you may not have a choice, but right now it's on the players to deliver.
Well, I mean, it's. If you think that the coach's systems and his line deployment is hurting your players, then maybe that's the time to do it. But I don't think that's the case. I mean, Zuccarello and Kaprizov have been hand in glove for a couple of seasons now, and it just they've tried them together, they've tried them apart, they've had Boldy in there. It's dry. And if you can try as hard as you want. You can have your depth guys doing all the things that they are maybe out kicking all the things you would expect. But if your big boys don't score, you don't have a chance.
No. All right, those are your headlines. So undoubtedly we'll have a lot more going on throughout the weekend and leading into episode 19 of the Ray and Dregs podcast. So thank you to Tim Hortons for that.
Tim's new non-alcoholic Bailey's flavored holiday menu. Enjoy the classic taste of the holidays anytime with a creamy Bailey's flavored latte. Celebrate the season with the taste of the holidays with Tim's new non-alcoholic Bailey's flavored holiday menu.
Our interviews on Ray and Dregs are brought to us by Canadian Club Whiskey. They've introduced the first release of the Canadian Club Invitation Series CC 15-year-old Sherry Cask, Signature CC Classic 12-year-old whiskey finished with a secondary aging in Oloroso Sherry Casks. We've got Josh Morrissey of the Winnipeg Jets joining us on the podcast this week, Ray. And as we acknowledged earlier, we recorded the interview on Thursday with Josh, and he talks about meeting with Rick Bowness, but did not know in doing this interview that, in fact, Rick Bowness is back. He's back on the bench of the Winnipeg Jets. It's a great story and a great discussion with Josh Morrissey. All right, here we go on the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast. We're joined by Winnipeg Jets defenseman Josh Morrissey. This is Thursday as we were recording here, Josh, but coming off a big win, 3-2 overtime win over the Tampa Bay Lightning. Another important game for you, a goal and an assist. You've got 8 points in your last 4 games. So you're on a point-per-game clip, which is basically what you were last year as well. But speak about how the team is playing and why things are going so well for you for the first 18, 19 games.
Yeah, I think for us, we really felt that we wanted to build off some of the things we did well enough to get into the playoffs last year. And I think in the off season, the depth that we added to our team, really has been a focal point of why we've been successful to start. And, I think played in the league long enough now to know you can win a couple games here and there, maybe not playing the right way, but just doing it with skill or talent. And I think, at least so far, we've managed to win games. I think a lot of them through just playing a good, solid team game, having contributions up and down the lineup, different areas kind of each night. And, just I think the depth of our team is what has been a huge strength. So obviously it's only 18 games in. We've got a long runway left, but I'm really excited just because we've been playing, in my view, such a quality team game, and we're just excited about that style, excited about buying into the system and getting the results that we have. So it's been great, and individually it's just been try to carry off last year. I worked hard in the off season to improve my game, and so far when you get to play with great players, you get rewarded as well.
Josh, I'll start with the team first. I guess it was a bit of a disappointing end the way that you guys finished, even though you did get into the playoffs. Lots of change over the summer. Hellebuck and Scheifele signed long contracts. I mean, the whole narrative seemed to switch over the 3 or 4 months. We're not there, but it feels different looking at you guys. Does it feel different inside your room with your team? You got all the LA guys that came in, and it's really changed quite a bit.
Totally. I mean, I think even going back to last year at the deadline, bringing in Nino and Vladdy, Nemestikov, two key players that just really provide way more depth for our team. Those guys can both play up and down the lineup, special teams, all situations. And, the LA guys that came in have all been fantastic. And, so for us to kind of have that boost through our lineup of all those guys, as well as a healthy Cole Perfetti, who we missed for a large part of the second half, really the whole second half of last year. That's a lot of players that are really good NHL players that come into your lineup and are making a difference. So, I think that in general has been a huge key. And then, like you mentioned, getting the excitement of having Scheif and Helly sign right before the season. I mean, these are two key players, obviously. Helly, Vezina goaltender, Scheif number one center, and to get those guys done, I think it sends a message to the team that a guy like myself who's signed here for the next 5 years, and other guys like we want to win. We obviously everything's up in the air before those deals get done, and it just solidifies that message that we're here to be competitive. We're here to push to try and win a cup and be a perennial, top team in the league. And so that message, I think, really excited us and, kind of just sent that boost through our locker room to start the year.
Mm. You, when you were in junior, you were a big points guy. You put up huge numbers, and then you come to Winnipeg, and it seems like your game, you morphed your game a little bit into being a little bit more, I don't know if cautious or responsible maybe is the word. What happened where you went, okay, now because I always thought you had way more offense than you were. It was like, it's right there. It just felt like it was right there. And now all of a sudden it's exploded. Like what made you be able to take that step?
Yeah, I think a lot of things. I mean, as you mentioned, when I came into the league, sometimes it's, you have to adapt to make the league. And I think when I came in, you look at the guys we had, obviously Dustin Byfuglien, Toby Enstrom, Myers, Trouba, a bunch of guys that were, top end defensemen and in those offensive situations. So if I wanted to play, I really needed to be solid defensively. I really, the first few years of my career, spent most of the time, in defensive situations and PK situations. And so I always felt that I had more offense as well to my game. But, until you kind of let that out in the NHL, I guess you never know. And I felt maybe the year, what year would it be, 21, 22, I started to kind of feel more of that offensive ability come out in the second half. And then when Bones and Arnie and the new staff came in last year, that was my first conversation with Rick, basically, was, he felt playing against us when he was coaching in Dallas that maybe I just happened to have some good games against him. I don't know, but he felt that I had a lot more offensive ability there and ability to be up in the play. And he's really encouraged our whole back end to do that. But, so I think it was a ton of that encouragement from the coaching staff, a little more of a leash to, make some mistakes at times, when you are creating offense. And also, I think just the right time in my career, I felt that
Right.
I worked really hard in my game. A lot of things started to feel good in my game. And so a lot of those things, I think, just kind of work together. But plus, as I mentioned before, when you play with guys like we have here, you make the right play at the right time. You're in the right situations. You get rewarded passing a guy like Kyle Connor.
You mentioned
now.
Sorry,
ahead, Drake. So just one more about that.
Yeah.
You said something about a little bit of comfort that you can make a mistake here or there, and it's not the end of the world. When you come into the league as a young guy, as a defenseman, I mean, I was a centerman. It was different. I had somebody to help me out, but there must be enormous pressure to not make a mistake. You must feel it, and at some point, you got to let it go. But talk about how hard it is to let that pressure go.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a tough situation. Obviously, you come in and I was lucky. I really loved playing for Paul Maurice and Charlie Huddy as the D coach, and I mean they were super encouraging of me in my career. Got going as well, but I mean the situation. If you're on an entry level, it's pretty easy to send you down. There's pressure to. Generally, if you're making the team and you have a pretty good back end, there's a few other guys that are there that, are out of the lineup every night. So, I tried to really focus on the details of the game, what the coaches were asking of us from a systematic perspective. And again, like I said, the opportunity that was available for me was PK and sort of that just solid 5-on-5 play with some, especially starting my career off playing with Buff. I mean, he wasn't back there too much. So if I was going to, and then outside of that, I think, the other thing that maybe I've thought about a little bit is, I had sort of the same staff for basically the whole part of my first 6 years of my career. And, I think it's not anything other than just the new staff comes in and sees you at 26, 27 years old. I mean, you're at a totally different point in your career than you are at 18, 19 when you come in. So, Bones had seen me from a visiting team perspective, and it just sometimes that changes their viewpoint of you as well. But he's encouraged me, and Arnie as well, to get up the ice, be offensive, be a threat, but also at the right times, playing the game the right way. And I think I've done a pretty good job of that. There's always times where you make the wrong read, but it goes back even just the last thing on that to the first few games I played under Arnie and Bones. After about 2 or 3 games, they called me in and did some video with me, and I was making a fine play, but there was an opportunity to hold on to the puck longer, or maybe make a seat pass, or threaten a little bit more offensively. And they basically said, "We want you to do that. We think you can do that. Here's Adam Fox, here's Quinn Hughes, here's Cale Makar. These are guys doing that every night, and we want you to push to try to do that as well." So having that encouragement from them was a total green light to be more offensive, and that really, I think, kicked off last year for me.
Yeah, Josh, speaking of Rick Bowness and Scott Arniel, this isn't a slight against Arnie. I mean, he takes over in a tough situation. The team really hasn't skipped a beat, but have you had any communication with Bones? We know he took a leave of absence to be with his wife, Judy, but has there been any dialogue? And then talk about the transition and going from Rick Bowness to now how Scott Arniel runs the Jets bench.
Yeah, obviously it's been a tough situation in the background. We love Bones, and he's such a mentor to all of us with his experience, and Judy as well. We've gotten a chance to meet her and get to know her around the arena, and I mean they are an NHL couple. They've been doing this for a very long time, and so when we heard about everything that happened, it was pretty devastating for our team. Just to know how much Rick cares about Judy. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to have a 5-minute conversation without him bringing up Judy. And so, how hard that is for him. But Rick's, it's probably killing him that he's away from the team. But at the same time, he's texting us all the time after games, with the leadership group or individually, great play or, different things like that. And I know he's watching everything and talking with Arnie and the staff after every game. And, I think actually now that we're down here in Florida, he's down here, so we're going to get the chance to see him here over the next few days, which will be great. But transition-wise, I don't think there was much of one. Obviously there was a little reshuffling on the bench.
Sure.
Arnie kind of took over the main responsibility, and Brad Lauer came back to run the D. But otherwise, they work together. I feel all of our coaches run different meetings and stuff like that. So they probably all have a little more on their plates. But in terms of the experience as a player, I don't think anything's really changed.
Yeah, you mentioned about earlier playing with Buff when you when you came in. I don't know that there's been many more entertaining or unique players than Dustin Byfuglien. Like he at his size and like the way he could move is. Can you give us a favorite Byfuglien story? And you must have a lot. The other thing I want to ask you about that, were you on the ice when he hit Mark Stone?
So I was not on the team yet when he hit Mark Stone, but
because that was a car crash. Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was, I was actually in the building. So the Moose, I was playing in the minors at the time, and I went to that game to watch. I wanted to watch Buff and Carlson and different guys playing in that game. And I was sitting in the press box, and the sound of that hit was, oof. I've never heard anything like it. I don't know how Stone got up. It was crazy. But that was Buff. He's just, I have so many stories. Had an absolute blast playing with him. I played probably my first 40 games exclusively. We were D partners, and that just did so much for my career. Ray, you brought it up before, sort of how do you manage that sort of nervousness, anxiety as a first-year player just trying to break into the league. And, he loved playing the game. He kept it light. He was always having fun out there. And I think one story in particular, I think we got scored on maybe, our second or third game into the season, and sit down on the bench, and he kind of put his arm around me, and he's like, "Welcome to the NHL, kid, like first of many." And, most guys are slamming the water bottle or stick after they get scored on. I was kind of like, what? And then just started laughing. And he would always joke with me. Same thing, your first part of your career, your shifts are a little shorter than they are as you, I guess, establish yourself. And he'd be yelling at me as I'm changing, and he's going up the ice like, "Stay out here, kid, stay out here." I'm like, we also used to joke, he'd always make his partner be on the inside on D-zone faceoff. So when we'd go bump sort of D behind the net, he'd get a takeoff up the wall. But it was awesome. Just things like that. I love it. He had such a good feel and just loved the game, just brought the energy and excitement. And, even now, I think I learned so much about just enjoying the game, enjoying the NHL, enjoying the whole thing that is playing in the league, and what we get to do is pretty cool. So he really epitomized that, and just loved playing with him. He was an absolute blast to play with.
Okay, so you're into your career now, solidly into it. Does it still give you the juice that it did when you started? Or you got to be more of a realist, of course, oh man, season, like you said, the season's long. We got 70 games, 60 games left. Do you still, it's still there, right? When you go there, do you still get charged?
For sure. I think you understand the sort of the progression throughout the year and the way that the game sort of changes, at the different segments throughout the year. But for me, I think what really put it into perspective was the COVID year, just having no fans. I obviously hope that never happens again. But at the same time, after being, I think, 3 or so years into my career and having that happen and, experiencing that and then coming back to a normal NHL again, I think really put into perspective for me where, you have to kind of look around once in a while, not to quote any famous movies, but you really do. You have to kind of smell the roses, and whether it's during the anthem in a place like either at home in Winnipeg or Chicago or Montreal, Madison Square, see the guys you're playing against and playing with, and some of the stuff that's guys are achieving. I think that's the kind of stuff that it's the NHL. It's such a cool experience, and it's the best league in the world. It's what you dream of as a kid. So for me, I think that COVID year really put it into perspective for me. And so now I try to do that as much as possible. And I think it's taken a little pressure off me for sure at times where at the end of the day, we get caught up in the, shift by shift, game by game, ups and downs. But, when you look at just the opportunity and how awesome it is to play in the league, I think, for me, that's what I try to look at and enjoy.
Yeah. I wish I would have had a little bit more of that, Josh. We'd get at practice and the coach would run another ridiculous drill that lasted too long. You're at the board too long, and Jeff Odgers would come over and say, "What were you thinking about?" And I'd say golf. He'd say, "I was thinking about hunting." But I wish I would have enjoyed that. And I wish I would have understood that it's just a moment, let it go. And man, you've been in the same place the whole time, yet there's been so much change to your road. And that perspective probably gives you a little bit extra gas in a long day.
Totally. Like I said, I think that COVID year really hit that for me. Even at that point, I just signed a long-term deal. We had a ton of turnover with our team, and I was going through some stuff personally with my family. And it was just once we got back to playing in front of real, crowds and in the real NHL, I guess, I probably appreciate it more. And don't get me wrong, there's moments in time where, individual things frustrate me and all that stuff as a competitive guy. But, I think trying to keep that perspective as much as possible is a good thing.
Josh, we could talk for an hour, but we're not going to do that. I promised Brownie that we wouldn't keep you longer than 20 minutes so you can get to the beach. But we appreciate you taking the time, and make sure you say hi to Bones for us.
Will do for sure. No, it's fun chatting, guys. Thanks for having me, and I'll say hi to Bones for sure.
Yeah, all the best, Josh. Good luck, eh?
Thanks, guys.
There's so many good stories around the National Hockey League, Ray. And I'm talking about player-specific stories, and not just because of how impactful they can be on the ice. And Josh Morrissey certainly has considerable influence into the Winnipeg Jets' start to this season. He's having a terrific year, right? He had a good year last year. He's one of their primary leaders, all of that. But I've watched it firsthand in Winnipeg. And there's so many players around the NHL, I'm repeating myself, who do this. They see the importance of fitting in and being influential in the community. And you see that from Josh, right? The stuff that he does, the charity work that he does, the meetings that he has with children and things like that. So from a leadership perspective, I think of Adam Lowry, I think of Mark Scheifele, but I think of Josh Morrissey. And I think those players deserve some credit. Throw Hellebuck into the mix. They've got a balance that Josh talked about with Perfetti now healthy and all of those things that do contribute to the reason why the Jets are having a good year so far.
Well, I don't think it can be understated. And Josh mentioned the signings of Connor Hellebuck and Mark Scheifele and the message it sends to the team and the fans. And it kind of, I think it was a big part of changing their look for not just this year, but their future, because it impacts somebody like Josh, who's got 5 years left on his contract.
Yeah.
It impacts perhaps a player that might think of coming to Winnipeg and playing. Like, I know Alex Iafallo loves it there, loves it in Winnipeg. He's been all over that lineup with injury and has been really effective for them, with injuries to other players. Josh, his game has just grown and grown. And I found it really interesting that I kind of forgot when he broke in what that Winnipeg defense was like. Like, there was nowhere to go. And so
it was
his
formidable.
Job just fit in. Yeah. And it's funny, as soon as I brought up Byfuglien to him, how he started to laugh.
Oh, yeah.
And just there's 150 stories about Buff, but it was really interesting and funny to listen to him talk about him. I can't think of a more unique player that's been in the NHL. Like, I don't know, 20 years. Like the guy was a rolling linebacker, out there, and he was so skilled and so good. And then he's just like, I had enough.
I'm gone. Yeah.
So I don't know. I thought it was a great interview. You can also see Josh, really thoughtful, mature guy. And, he's, what is he, 6 years in Winnipeg? He'll be 11 by the time this deal's done. And, he's a cornerstone player for them.
100%. All right, buddy. Well, we'll let you go. You're going to San Diego to watch a little soccer, correct?
Yep.
Cammy is there already.
Yeah, I got the game tonight, Canucks and Kraken, and then in San Diego for the weekend, and then next week got a couple of games. But I wanted to mention too, I did the game on Wednesday in Vancouver's in Colorado, and man, watching those teams. The first period was as good a period as I've seen, I think, this year. It was so high paced. It was, the skill, and like there was a 4-on-4 out there, and it was Rantanen, McKinnon, Taves, and Makar, and Miller, Pettersson, Hughes, and Hronek. And it was like, it was like, and none of them are thinking, I should guard defensively about the other guys. They're thinking, I'm going to score on these four. It was great. It was really great. And Makar's got 18 points in 8 games right now, 2 goals and 16 assists. And Hughes has got 20 points this month to still lead the league in scoring. It was really a great hockey game.
So not that you want to think about this over the course of the weekend, but a bit of a homework assignment, because we haven't brought up the talk of NHL general managers and how they should or might tweak 3-on-3. And we know what has been speculated on and discussed. We're not going to talk about it right now, but I want you to go through this weekend and come up with a Ray Ferraro tweak. I mean, maybe it's part of what's already been discussed, but you always have a keen eye for that kind of stuff, especially when you're standing between the benches and you see it firsthand. So next week, next Tuesday, in the next episode.
Okay, Professor,
I'll be on discussion. Okay, buddy. All right, safe travel and best to the family. I hope you have a good rest of the Thanksgiving weekend.
Thanks very much. Thanks for listening, everybody. I hope everybody has a great weekend. We'll talk to you next week.
Yes, and thank you to our sponsors who continue to support Ray and Dregs. Our title sponsor, Canadian Club Whiskey, and Tim Hortons. And as always, thank you for listening, for rating, for sharing the podcast, and in particular, following us on the Ray and Dregs YouTube channel. Until next time, stay safe, everyone.